Okay, everyone, hi and welcome to week 6. At the end of this week, halfway through the trimester, it's gone so fast, and that tends to happen every trimester. They go a lot faster than what we think. So today we're going to talk about psychological theories of crime. This is very much an individual perspective where we're focusing on, individuals rather than groups, as we will do next week in sociological theories of crime. So for now, we'll just focus on individuals. So what does the word psychology or psychological actually mean? Well, what is psych? What does ology mean? Well, psych means the brain. CHO or co means the individual. So it's the study of the brains of individuals, because that is what ology means, the study of. So it's the study of brains of individuals. Let's get going. All right, first of all, assessment 2 is your career PowerPoint. There's been a fair bit of information put onto previous weeks, so there's a suggested list of jobs there. It is not compulsory for you to use one of these as long as it relates to a job you can get by having a criminology degree or diploma. So tell me about the job using the criteria, which is also available on the portal. You can have 2 slides, one for your introduction and one for your conclusion, and then 4 in the middle to tell me about your career. Make sure that the dot points that you have on your slides actually relate to the script that's down the bottom in the notes section. So you must have points on your slides and then, embellish on those or expand on those in your notes section down the bottom. I've decided that the easier way to do this, rather than having a submission point, is for you to just email them to me, and when I receive them, I will send you a notification that you have submitted. This is due by Friday of week 8. Don't forget, week 8 is the 28th of August, as there is a week off the week before. It's the mid-trimester break. So you need to either attach it to your email as a PowerPoint, so done in PowerPoint, or if you do it in some other weird program where the slides, the notes section won't come up, save it as a PDF and email that to me. Okay, if you've got any questions, please feel free to email me, or we can talk about it in class. All right, the outline of today's lecture. So we're going to talk today about the role of theory, what is psychology, and then we're going to apply psychological theory to criminal behaviour using 4 psychological theories. So it's fairly heavy. Stay with me and write down any questions that you might have. Okay. Why are theories important? Well, why should we care about them? Because it helps us to organise our knowledge and our perspectives into theory. It's the base of our knowledge to start explaining things. Theories help us to answer the most important question that we do in research, and that is why. We're going to try and answer the question why people do what they do. And that is the big question that theory is trying to address. Okay, so contrasting theoretical positions. The graph that you can see down the bottom here is opposing viewpoints. One causes the crime, which is this one, anticipated strain, and the other controls it. Sorry, the other way around. The one down the bottom, personal strain, causes it. This one up the top, the idea is that these variables here will help to control it. But it can be the same people that are causing it or preventing it. Okay, you don't need to worry too much about notes for this slide. This one's really just general information only. So strain theory, which we will do more of next week in sociological theory, it asserts that crime occurs because of some sort of strain to the offender. And it could just be that you've got someone who really wants something. We went through this in, I can't remember, a couple of decades ago with Nike basketball boots. They came out, they were very expensive. People couldn't afford them. Young people wanted them. The only way they could get them was to steal them. And they were stealing them because they wanted to look really cool. So strain theory would assert that there is a strain on the young person to feel cool and be part of the in crowd. So they'll go and commit a crime in order to maintain that image that they want to maintain. Social control theory, on the other hand, is what stops young people from committing crime. So having a really good feeling when you're at school that you're part of something and that you are part of a community can help to stop you from committing crime. Workplaces can exert control over individuals and prevent them from committing crime, because when they're engaged with social institutions, or they won't commit crime. So when they're not engaged, they will. And social control, if you look at social control through the ages, back in the 16th century, it was very much the church that had this social control over the people and made them not commit crime by telling them of all the horrible things that would happen to them if they did. Now, for us in the 21st century, it is cameras. Cameras that are watching us all the time. They work as a social control to stop us from committing crime. So let's try and only go one at a time. So what should theories do? Well, what theories should do is give rise to predictions about criminal behaviour. We are using the theories to find out why people become criminal. So we then can make predictions about who will become criminal and what crimes they may commit. The abstract or independent of time and space. So white collar crime here has always been about money. So we can look at white collar crime, which is quite abstract, and see if we can figure out why it happens and who will do it. Provide an explanation of the mechanisms leading to criminal behaviour. Why do people commit crime? And an understanding of past criminal events and behaviour, because if we look to the past, that will help us to look to the future. And be testable or accessible. This is really, really important. If you cannot test a theory, then it cannot be supported. Someone could say to you, well, Satan made me do it. Well, can we test that or assess that? It does not have predictive utility. What does that mean? Well, it asks how good it is at predicting something will happen. And to say that Satan did it when we can't test it does not have predictive utility. Labelling theory. Is labelling theory mentioned there? Well, we're going to talk about labelling theory anyway, so it's important that you know what it is because you'll do it over and over and over in the coming years, and you'll be doing it in social problems with Sheena, so we'll talk about it in a few minutes. Okay, the importance of theory testing. If they're not testable or falsifiable, they cannot contribute to the accumulating knowledge about crime. So if we can't take a theory and test it to see whether the same result happens again or whether you got a false result the first time, cannot contribute to the accumulating knowledge. It's important because we're allowing the theory to be assessed and perhaps supported, perhaps rejected. You might have to change it and modify it or elaborate it and make it bigger. So the ongoing challenge is to ensure that this occurs. And you can see here that this is like it's circular, it just keeps on going. So you might come up with a theory or a hunch. You will do some observation or some testing of it, find out what your research findings and conclusions are. When you get those research findings and conclusions, you might find things that worked really well, things that didn't work so well, come up with ideas of how to improve it. So you go back to the theory and you start again. And you do some more observation and testing. So you can see that it can be circular and go round and round until you find something that works really, really well, can be tested over and over, you'll get the same result, or if it's found to be false, then it needs to be rejected. And this is what's called evidence-based practice, and this is what everyone does in psychology, criminology, in any field. You need evidence-based support, research, practice. So it's very important that we understand that. Okay, the history. Cesare Beccaria published his book on crimes and punishment in 1764, and this time in history was called the Age of Enlightenment. It began the shift away from thinking that all criminals were merely possessed by the devil, which was what the church had everyone believe. People who were criminals were possessed by the devil. Beccaria asserted that criminals behave with reason, rationality, and free will to make choices. So what he was saying was that before someone commits a crime, they weigh up the benefits that they're going to get from committing that crime. They think about what the consequences might be, and they have the free will to make the choice to either commit the crime or not. So they weren't just possessed by the devil, they had free will. This was a whole new way of thinking. And it also coincided with changes in the way that prisoners were treated. In 1876, which was just over 100 years later, the other Cesare Lombroso published Criminal Man. And he has been called the father of criminology as we know it. It was the beginning of the scientific approach and also called the positivist school. Now, he changed the thought from Beccaria saying that criminals 100% had free will. He was now talking about more biological traits, and he focused really in on those physical traits. So think about it. How can physical traits predict criminality? Well, I thought I had another slide there, but I don't. So Lombroso looked at the skulls of hundreds of criminals, and this was up in northern Italy, and he discovered there were certain features on the skulls that people who were in prison, and remember this would have only been men, had, that he decided predisposed them to being criminals. So if they had a certain shaped forehead, a certain shaped skull, I'd be in trouble because high cheekbones was one of the ones that he came out with, a certain shaped chin. So he was focusing purely on physical traits. The only problem was that he was only looking at men, and he was only looking in northern Italy, which means that they all pretty much had the same types of physical looks because they were all from the one group of people. So while what he said has been pretty widely debunked and we don't use it at all today, it's seen as being the start of some sort of scientific approach to studying crime. Today, over 30 major theoretical statements available. You don't need to know these, they're not going to ever be on the exam, but it's just to get you used to the fact that there are different ways that research is done, and it's done over and over and over so that it can be seen to be good empirical support for a theory. So single factor reductionism, which is the singular testing of an idea, multiple factor approaches, multiple factor reductionism, and integrated or interdisciplinary theory. Okay, just read over those. This isn't on the exam. It's just a different way of explaining how data is gathered and analysed to support theory. So how do we link theory to practice? Do you think that police and people in the field really ask you about theory? Well, QPS does a lot of research, and this is called evidence-based practice. There are a lot of police officers who come back to university and do degrees. There are a lot of police officers doing their doctorates. Greg's just about finished doing his. So they do use a lot of theory and a lot of research to inform improvements in the way they practice. Theories can inform policy, understanding the causes, the proximal and distal causes of crime. Proximal means it's up close. Distal means further away. What's happening to cause crime that's up close to somebody committing it? What's further away? Bit of an abstract, but you'll get it as you go through your studies. Informing criminal justice policy and practice, so theory can do that. Evidence-based policy, informing the development of policy and practices. Interventions to prevent crime, developmental interventions, situational interventions, which we looked at last week in street crime, criminal justice interventions, which we will look at over the next coming week. So labelling theory has been really extremely influential in the criminal justice system, which is part of developmental. How this happens is by making subtle changes. So we don't call children who are in the criminal justice system, we don't call them criminal anymore, we call them delinquent. We don't label them as being criminal or delinquent. And we don't do that because most of these kids, as you will remember, will do something stupid once or twice and they'll just grow out of it and they will become law-abiding citizens and never do anything wrong again. If we refer to them as being criminal, they've gotten this label that they may never be able to shake off, and it can affect them down the track when it comes to jobs, getting a passport and travelling, certain jobs they won't ever be able to do, like join defence or police, if they've got a criminal record. So we don't label them. Because really, how many ways are there to raise a child? Is there any one way that is right way? Parents will try lots of different things to see what works. And it's the same with theory. We're going to try lots of different things to see what works because it helps us to inform policy and practice. So labelling theory. I did briefly touch on this. So there are some rules that are now surrounding young people who are in the criminal justice system. One of them is that they are referred to as being delinquent, not criminal. The media cannot report a juvenile offender's name. Okay, you'll see that a lot. And some of that can be to protect the victims as well, but mostly it's to protect the young person who may not go on to have a lifetime of offending, but being named in the media, especially in these days with the internet and social media, can cause huge amounts of damage down the track when they're trying to lead a normal life. Think about how much somebody might do something really, really silly at schoolies. Come home, go to university, go into life and never do anything silly again. Juveniles can be cautioned or diverted from the criminal justice system, so they may not actually go through the gate, but be diverted to youth justice conferencing, which you will cover in depth in forensic psych next trimester. Or divert them to drug and alcohol programs. Okay, so labelling can cause really informal responses that can reduce a person's feeling of being marginalised, stigmatised, and constructing their identity as deviant. If you tell someone often enough that they are a criminal or they are bad or they are stupid, they will start to live that believing that that's what they are. Young children who are called names constantly, either through friends or parents or whatever, will start to live that. So we need to keep that in mind with the way we speak about young people. The number of kids being put into detention is small. The current state government has a policy of not putting children into detention only as an absolute last resort. What about adults? Don't care. So once they hit 18, don't care. Kids deserve chances. Adults have lost the right to privacy, so they are named. Okay, there's only 2 parts this week, but the second one will be a little bit longer. We're going to start going through the 4 theories that I told you about and how they can be used to explain offending. So see you for part 2.